Welcome to step 2 of our lesson for probability. We're going to be talking now about possible outcomes, and we're going to find the possible outcomes for a single event. So if we scroll down to unlocking our problem today, when you toss a coin, there are two possible results. In probability, a possible result is called an outcome. So we have two outcomes when we toss a coin. The possible outcomes in a coin toss are heads and tails. The outcomes heads and tails are equally likely because each has the same chance of happening. So you can either get heads or tails. So the activity was to record the outcomes of tossing a coin 25 times. I predicted the number of times that I was going to toss a coin and get heads or tails. So my prediction was that I would get 12 times for heads and 13 times for tails. Well, then I actually tossed the coin 25 times and I recorded my results here in the tally chart, as you can see. So I actually did get 5, 10, 15 heads and only 5, 10 tails. Now, am I going to change my prediction? No, because I think I did pretty well and I was pretty close. So if we answer these, it says the possible outcome of each coin toss is either, well, you can only get heads or tails. So I'm going to put an H for heads and a T for tails. How many outcomes were there in all? Well, how many times did I toss my coin? They told us up here in the directions to toss it 25 times. So there were 25 outcomes. How many outcomes were heads? Well, I had 15 heads. And if I wanted to write it in probability terms like a fraction, I could do 15 out of 25 times. How many outcomes were tails? Well, 10 were tails. And then I could write it for probability 10 out of 25 times. Let's fix the 2. It does not like the 2, does it? Let's go this way. There we go. So if I scroll down, it asks me, was my prediction close to the actual results? And it was pretty close. And that's because there was only 2 outcomes. I could have heads or tails, right? And then what if I tossed the coin 50 times? If I predicted how many times I would expect to toss heads, I would just cut it in half. What's 50? What's half of 50? Well, 25 plus 25 is 50. So my prediction would be that I would get 25 heads and then I get 25 tails. That's not going to be absolutely accurate, okay, but it's likely if we use our probability terms. Scrolling down, we have an example with some marbles. So it says list all the possible outcomes for the event. Cal is going to pull one marble from the bag without looking. What are the possible outcomes for one pull? So it says here, think the possible outcomes does not mean the total number of marbles in the bag, but the total number of different kinds of marble. So every color marble in the bag is actually a possible outcome. So I'm just going to write the first letter of each color on this here, but it says marble colors in the bag are Y for yellow, G for green, and R for red. Those are our possible outcomes. So the possible outcomes for one pool are yellow, green, or red. If we look at this bag of counters, it says Ryan will pull a counter from the bag without looking. How many possible outcomes are there in all? The possible outcomes are, well, there's only 2 outcomes because you can either get red or yellow. So there are 2 possible outcomes in all. Think every color counter in the bag is a possible outcome, okay? Let's use the spinner for the next one. Karina spins the pointer. Which outcomes are equally likely? Ooh, well, I want you to look at this spinner as a fraction. If the circle is a region and we broke it up into 4 pieces, all of those pieces are equal, right? So it's asking us which ones are equally likely. They all are. So all the possible outcomes are going to be red, blue, green, and yellow. So the equally likely outcomes are the same. All 4 of them are equally likely because of how the spinner is broken up. If we scroll down just one more time, I've done some work here for you, and it talks about the possible outcomes for each of these things. A quarter's outcomes would be heads or tails. This spinner is white, yellow, blue, red, or green. Those are the outcomes. If we look at the outcomes of the bag, we have red 1, green 2, yellow 3. We actually have a yellow 5 and a blue 4. Those are all of the outcomes that you could pull out of the bag. And of course, when we roll the dice, our outcomes could be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I hope that helps you understand what an outcome is.